Hello everyone and welcome to this Ranger4 webcast. Today we'll be looking at the DevOps LiftOff Workshop, and the webcast will be brought to you by the DevOps Director at Ranger4, Helen Bill. If you have any questions during the webcast, please use either the chat feature or the questions feature in the GoToWebinar. For now, I'll pass you over to Helen.
Thanks, Tej, and hello everyone. As Tej said, I'm Helen, and today we're going to be talking about the DevOps LiftOff Workshop. So what is the DevOps LiftOff Workshop? It is a one-day interactive workshop. So it's been designed because lots of customers come to us and say they don't really know where to start with DevOps, or quite often we begin a fairly large DevOps transformation project with customers, and this is a good place to kind of get everyone in a room and get some things sort of leveled out and agreed from the start. So it's designed for around sort of between 8 and 12 people. And as I say, get them all in a room and get them running through these exercises and understanding a bit more and agreeing together what DevOps is all about. So the kind of three key things that we're trying to do when we do this workshop is, first of all, baseline current state. So get an idea of where your organisation is today on our DevOps maturity scale. And we'll have a look at one of our DevOps maturity scales in a short while, and you can see kind of how we start placing people. Then what we need to be able to do is articulate what the desired future state looks like, so where people want to go, what they want their culture to look like, what an organisational change might entail, where they are in terms of their interaction maturity, and by that I mean looking across the whole SDLC, so across the whole software development lifecycle, from ideation, so requirement solicitation and management, the whole way through development and build and integration and deployment and release, and through testing, and all the way to monitoring and the realization of the value of the thing that has, or the feature that has been delivered. And then the final thing that we need to do is kind of mark the path or the journey between those 2 points, the current state and the future state. So we develop a DevOps roadmap as part of the workshop. So that gives you something tangible that you can work with your business and say, right, we did this workshop, this was the output, these are the kind of things that we think we need to do. So this is the typical agenda for the workshop. This can be varied. If other people, if there's particular exercises you want to include or exclude, we can change it around. So it's pretty intense, as you can see. Most of the exercises are between sort of 20 and 40 minutes. So as you can imagine, a larger room of people, it's sometimes a little bit like herding cats. So your DevOps LiftOff Workshop facilitator has to work pretty hard to keep everyone focused on what's happening. What we tend to find is that organisations have natural groups, or just want a better word, cliques, that people kind of gravitate towards the groups that they're used to working with. So what we do is when we start the workshop in the morning, we kind of let everybody sit where they want to sit, and the first exercise is, you can see, a whole group exercise, but then we start splitting into smaller teams, and in the morning we kind of effectively let people kind of migrate to their own chosen smaller teams. But after lunch we've had a look then, and we've kind of seen which people are liking to working together, and we then create a little bit of disruption by switching the teams around, which gives a different view on how people work together. So let's have a look at the exercises in a little bit more detail. So the very first exercise we do is about defining DevOps. This is actually much more difficult than it sounds. Lots of you will have been working in this space already and have seen that there are quite a few different definitions of DevOps out there in the marketplace. At its very core, it is about making better software faster, delivering more innovation to your end users and delighting those end users. But we'll spend some time with the group trying to understand where everyone's current understanding of DevOps is and what it means to that particular organisation. And what we say to some people is, actually it doesn't matter if DevOps is nothing more than a label that you apply to effectively continuous improvement. If it's just something that can give you some more kind of motivation to make change and make things better, then that's great. This is one of my favourite ways of defining DevOps. So this is Jesse Robbins's quote: "Don't fight stupid, make more awesome." So at the core of DevOps, and the reason it's got so much currency in the marketplace today is really about the conflict that we've seen between Dev and Ops, which has come about because of the way that we have traditionally organised our IT departments around silos. So we've had the IT director, and then we've had the head of Dev and the head of Ops reporting into him, and we've created a wall between those two organisations. And I say a wall, and I kind of mean that figuratively, but actually, literally, I have seen organisations where there's been Dev on one side of the corridor and Ops on the other. I've seen them on different floors. I even have one customer in Scandinavia who has them in the same town but in different buildings. So that conflict that we're trying to resolve, that conflict that manifests itself in several different ways. So you may hear things in your organisation like, Ops just take too long to give me the environments that I need. You might hear Ops saying, development keep on asking for admin access to production systems that they shouldn't be able to touch. You might have the concept of war rooms. So you might, if you have an outage, you might all troop into a space that's specially designated to do these kind of post-mortems or retrospectives on what's just happened and trying to fix it. You might have the concept of a release weekend where everyone has to prepare, cross their fingers and come in on the weekend to make a release happen and fix any problems that happen when that is occurring. So these are all pain points that we're trying to fix when we're doing DevOps. So when we're talking about DevOps cultural change, we spend a lot of time talking with organisations about things like blame and failure, and we're trying to avoid and trying to fix problems where people are finger pointing. We're trying to encourage people to experiment in safe ways. So we're trying to get rid of these kind of what Jesse refers to here as stupid. He kind of really means just these conflicting, painful behaviours. And when he says make more awesome, he's really just saying let's get some really cool stuff, this innovation that you want to the market that will be game changing for you as a business, will help you thrive and will make your customers really happy. So that's the first exercise, defining DevOps. The second exercise, we start to baseline where you are today. So we have some pre-built kind of charts of metrics that we think are key and common to DevOps. So they are things like the volume and frequency of defects, the time taken to fix the defects, the MTTRs, the mean time to resolution or resolve. So that's how quickly you can recover from an outage or an incident. And the volume and frequency of release is another one that we often use. This is a really interesting exercise because this is the first one that we do when we split up into smaller groups. And it's very interesting to see if the groups come up with the same answers. And some organisations do that and some don't. And it really shows you kind of how mature an organisation is in terms of measuring themselves and their level of understanding of what they're achieving today and how much they're communicating and collaborating with each other about that. We also try and elicit at this point some metrics that are unique to the particular organisation that we're working with on that day, because every organisation is different and has their own goals and their own unique things that they're trying to measure. Many of you that are familiar with DevOps as well will have heard the phrase CAMS or CALMS. So this was coined by John Willis as an acronym to explain sort of the component parts of what he thinks DevOps is about. So that's culture, automation, metrics and sharing. When I say CALMS, Jez Humble put an L in there for lean at some point. So the M is the most important piece here, though, which is the metrics or the measuring part. So here we're baselining, understanding where you are, and that you will see as we go through the workshop forms the basis of a number of other exercises. So I mentioned we'd have a look at the maturity scale earlier on. This is our DevOps maturity scale. Now bear in mind that this is like the distillation of about 150 different questions that we ask when we're doing any kind of DevOps assessment that we've tried to break down into 5 kind of stages. So we use maturity matrices a lot. If you've seen any of my other presentations, you've probably seen the maturity matrices that we use around CALMS, the one that the Gartner continuous delivery one that we use. We also have pieces or maturity matrices for each piece of the software development process. So for example, requirements management maturity and release maturity. This one is specifically around DevOps, and what we find with all the maturity matrices actually is that people might say, well, I'm a bit of 1 and a bit of 2 and a bit of 3. So I'm doing, you know, we've written some scripts and we have cross-functional teams, but we still have some war rooms. But We're quite good about the blame thing now. We quite have some quite good positive and healthy ways of doing postmortems. And that's fine, and that's common against all the maturity matrices, but what it helps us to do is visualize where somebody is on the scale, and it helps us to start building this roadmap. So it helps us start designing or defining that desired future state of where a company wants to be. So we can look at maturity matrices and say, right, you're there at the moment, you would like to be up there. So we're starting to get that roadmap building. So that leads me nicely on to the third exercise, which is the definition of that future state. So again, this is a small group exercise, and again, it's very interesting to see how common the thinking is about what that is. Some people lean towards defining future states that are quite culturally involved with what the culture should look like in the future. Some people are more about the tooling or the automation. So this is a good exercise to get us building that roadmap and then starting to understand what the business case will look like behind that. So at this point, we've got the metrics, we've got the future state, and we're starting to try and join these things together. So at that point, we can start trying to say, well, we've got a lot of defects, for example. That's one of the things that we're trying to fix. We've got some numbers around how many of those defects there are, and we can say that our desired future state is to reduce that number of defects by half, for example, and potentially reduce the defects resolution time by half, and that enables us to start putting some numbers around it and start building a business case. Again, we've got some templates here that we can use as part of the workshops. So this gives us a high-level view of the kind of things that people will want to say to their CFO if they want to go and ask for some investment to spend on people or some tooling or some consulting to get their DevOps project moving forward. Then we have a break, so we'll summarise where we've got to, get all the groups together and sharing their information and what they've covered in the morning, and we'll have some lunch. We usually ask people, this workshop is normally done on customer sites or on your site. We do have rooms and places available if you wanted us to provide space for you. But when we do the lunch session, we try and keep it quite informal. What we want people to be doing is not kind of rushing off back to their desks and trying to keep up with work, but actually kind of mingling with each other and talking about what they've done in the morning. So after lunch, we do some work around setting goals. So again, this is where the metrics come in and is really, really important. So we've got a couple of examples of kind of goals that we try and set with people, and we go through, I'm sure all of you are familiar with SMART goals and the parts that you need to satisfy in terms of what a SMART goal is. So here is an example of a SMART goal around releases. So our team will release updates to the core business application Milton once a day by the 1st of September 2014. We currently perform releases once a fortnight, but believe using automation this goal is attainable. Not only will it allow us to put revenue-generating innovation to market faster, the process will be more consistent and reliable. So this is all the attributes of a SMART goal in terms of we know who's doing it, when it's going to be done, what we're going from and what we're going to. So we start setting these goals, and these are closely linked again to the future state exercise that we did just before lunch. Here's another example of a SMART goal that we often use to help people start thinking about it. So we, the testing team, will reduce the volume of defects from 20 to 2 per week by the end of 2014, and through improved testing techniques, reduce the average time to fix the defect from 4 hours to 30 minutes in the same time frame, thus removing backlog and pushing software improvements to market at greater velocity. Now, this one's quite an interesting one because I wrote this one, as you can tell, quite some time ago, and the first time I used it, we talked about it and we noticed that this actually has some fundamental issues as a goal. Mainly that you're asking the testing team to reduce the volume of defects, and the testing team, of course, are not responsible for the volume of defects. The defects don't come from the testing team, they're given to the testing team. So, giving them responsibility isn't very sensible, and we have some really good discussions here, not just about setting us the goals, but why we set goals and how to set goals. And then also how an organisation is currently setting goals. So do all the teams share a single goal? Are there organisational goals? Are any of the goals in conflict with each other? And all of that kind of conversation. Now, part of this then leads to the next section, or the next exercise that we do. So this is some neuroscience that we subscribe to. It's from a book called Brain at Work, and it basically has the theory that all of us are motivated by one of 5 main factors. So the factors are summarised in this acronym here, SCARF, and they are status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So when we've been talking about the goals, we've been talking about what people want to achieve, and then we talk about, how we feel when we achieve a goal and what the rewards should be from that goal. And we talk about extrinsic rewards quite a lot. So we talk about, should people get a bonus? Should they get a job title change? What happens when somebody does something or achieves something against one of the goals that have been set? And then what we discover is that actually the best rewards for people are often more intrinsic. So they're the rewards that make us feel good, that make us feel happy in our job, that make us feel that we have the autonomy and the mastery and the purpose, that allow us to feel that we are achieving something and contributing something, and that we have a part to play. So what we do in this section, so the 6th exercise, is we do some self-assessment around SCARF. So we use some online tooling that enables people to try and categorise them, and then we have a chat with the team about which people are more motivated by, for example, relatedness, and what that means from a goal perspective. And it's a really good way of understanding not just a little bit more about yourself, but about the people that you're working with, and then you can work better together and collaborate better when you're trying to do or achieve goals together. So the next exercise, we dip into flow and the theory of constraints. So hopefully anybody that's involved with DevOps should have read The Phoenix Project, which is the seminal novel about DevOps. It features Bill, who's been given an interim CIO role in a company that has a nasty project that's failing. It has Brent, who's your typical highly functioning, very, very capable IT person that's become a bottleneck because he's just being asked to do too much. And Eric, who is this amazing guy that kind of comes in and shares his philosophy and helps them all understand flow and the theory of constraints, and how to remove bottlenecks and how to control work in progress and keep stuff moving. So one of the ways in which we can help people understand this sort of stuff is by using this process Kanban that I'm sure many of you have heard of, that originated in manufacturing in Toyota in factories. It's widely used in the IT space now to help us understand the work that's coming through and control this flow. So we have a little game that we play here, which is called Feature Ban. So it's a post-it note based game, just like Kanban, and we play around with trying to push features through the development life cycle, and what happens when we put blockers in and remove stuff and that sort of thing. So coming up to sort of the final couple of exercises, the 8th exercises we do, this one gets a little bit technical, not too technical, but we start looking at the software manufacturing pipeline. So this is closely linked to the last exercise, as you can imagine, around flow. Here we're looking at the software manufacturing pipeline, or we often refer to it as the DevOps toolchain or a continuous delivery pipeline. So what we do here, there's 2 parts to this exercise. The first is we have visualised on a board using kind of sticky logos where we have them available, your existing tool set. And with many organisations, we find that DevOps has been a bit of a grassroots movement, and people may have started to use tooling in their different teams, and potentially there's quite some fragmentation. So this isn't ever really as straightforward as, right, there's 10 spots on the tool chain. Have you got Jira in that one? Have you got Confluence in that one? Have you got Urban Code in that one? Have you got Rational Quality Manager in that one? It's a bit more complicated than that. Different tools, multitude of tools, fragmentation around tools. But we can get back to this desired future state of going, right, actually you do need to do some tools rationalization, you need to make some strategic decisions, or you do have a big glaring gap around deployment automation or around service virtualization. So those are kind of things that you could work towards. which is really what the final exercise is about, which is about building this roadmap. So it's taking everything that we've covered during the day and saying, right, this is what we learned about our current state. This is where we want to be, and these are the steps we need to take to get there, whether that is develop a project and get a load of people behind it and apply some budget to it, assess things properly, and then perhaps get involved with doing some organisational change. Maybe you want to rearrange some of your people around product a bit more than having kind of skill silos. It may be that you want to take a closer look at your deployment process and automate some of that. All sorts of different things, and everyone's roadmap is unique, but built of the same components in different orders and in different prioritizations. So that was the final exercise. So this is the kind of thing that a roadmap looks like. So just to summarise again, what we're aiming to do in this workshop is start off with this baseline assessment. So assessing and articulating the current state using these metrics, then defining or articulating this desired future states of where you want to go, then having a think about the kind of initiatives and imperatives that need to be considered, and this helps you and us assess which ones fit and which ones should be prioritised. So when we go back to thinking about flow and the theory of constraints, we talk about the fact that if we fix something that isn't a constraint, you're basically just increasing the flow of work to the next constraint, or you're creating a vacuum after the last constraint. And then there's an example on the right there of some kind of project plan. So as I said, these do vary from organisation to organisation, and this is just one example, but you kind of see there's some sort of cultural and organisational stuff moving into some process things, so looking at deployment process and test process, and then potentially some automation and tooling. And the big red box there is designed to articulate this kind of future state in as short or few as words as possible. Not everyone's desired future state is continuous delivery. We will have lots of conversations during this workshop always around the differences, crossovers and flow of continuous integration, continuous delivery and continuous deployment, and define what that means to the particular organisation. And then finally, the really important part actually is about quantifying the value. So this idea of a hard to ka-ching, or being able to measure from ideation to realisation of value. So being able to showcase some feedback to the business that IT produced this feature and delivered it to your customers and they were delighted, and it meant that your business benefited in certain ways. So to summarise, there are the 9 exercises as standard that we've been through on the call today. So the first exercise is about defining DevOps. The second exercise is around baselining the metrics. The third is around visualising the future state. The fourth, you'll remember we did some work around writing business cases. And the fifth, we looked at SMART goals and started setting some goals around probably around the metrics that you'd established in the second exercise, linked with the future state. And then we did some work around motivations and Kanban and flow and constraints and pipeline and building a DevOps roadmap. So in terms of deliverables, once you guys have all been through the workshop, what should you expect to have at the end? A number of outputs. So first of all, your own DevOps vision statement. So a statement that says, our organisation believes that DevOps is this and it could do this for us. This is where we want to go. You will have some metrics that say this is where we think we are today. You will have a business case in draft based on those metrics that says we think this is where we are today. We think these things are costing us this much. We think we could reduce those costs in this way, or we think we could make more money by being able to deliver more innovation faster. Some very clear DevOps goals around that business case, and then this roadmap and the action plan. So that's it. That is the DevOps LiftOff Workshop from Ranger4. If you would like one, please do get in touch. You can see our email address there. As I said, they're one day. They are typically delivered on site in your rooms, but if not, we can provide our own spaces for you to do them in one of our places. So thank you very much for your time, and do let me know if you would like some more information. I'm just checking to see if we've got any questions, but I can't see any at the moment. So thanks very much, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.